Hi there, I'm John and welcome to a special Arty Insight webinar hosted by Shopkeep Arty, the online platform helping everyone to be inspired, learn new art skills and have fun. Today we're going to be meeting an award-winning watercolour artist called Joe Dowden, who will be discussing how he approaches painting water reflections and light and shade and things like that. So let's activate the travelometer and we'll go there now. So Joe's landscape and marine paintings are in private, corporate and government collections around the world. You can also find some of his work hanging in public institutions and royal palaces, no less. He's authored books in many languages and worked for dozens of publishers globally. He's also presented television programs, so we're really in for a treat. Hello, Joe.
Hello, hi.
How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
What's interesting, it's really nice to feature you for the first time, and what's interesting is that I understand you're great friends with a number of our other featured artists, such as Amit Kapoor, for example, who over in New Delhi, who you've actually had stay at your house, I understand.
Yes, it was fantastic to have Amit over. I've worked with him in different places around the world. I already knew his work when I met him, so I was very excited to see Amit.
Yeah.
Fantastically colourful, vibrant painter. Never takes more than an hour to do anything.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. And I think he loved the English countryside, didn't he?
Absolutely blown away by it. I know a very famous engine driver called Clive Groom. Works on the Bluebell Road. He's taught everybody to drive steam engines over the last few decades. And he said he would take Amit out on the footplate of a loco.
Oh,
So
wow, well, that's
Amit
amazing.
loves steam engines, and he had a ride on the Bluebell Railway. What he
Oh, I
really loved
bet
was the
that was
wildlife.
amazing. I bet that was amazing. Right, now, let me just tell our audience what they can expect from this show today. So these special webinars come in three parts. So first of all, we're going to find out a little bit more about the artist, their background, their inspiration and why they paint what they paint. As always, since this is live, you can help influence the direction of the show with the questions you ask. So please type those on the Q&A in the webinar. After a short introduction, we'll then discuss and explore the theme around the upcoming workshop. In this case, the use of water and reflections in your paintings. We'll take a look at some of Joe's previous works of art to illustrate what we're talking about, as well as discuss the materials he uses in the creation of his paintings, and this will lead us nicely on to discuss his upcoming 2 to 3 hour workshop, which is scheduled to take place next week. Finally, and most excitingly, we'll then take the learnings that we've discussed and use them to create a simple yet effective watercolour sketch as a prelude to the longer workshop. This final paint along section of today's webinar is exclusive for our patrons and paying guests. A recording of the first two parts of this show will be uploaded to YouTube later. However, the full recording, including the paint along section, will only be available from our patron video library. So for the first part of this show, simply relax and absorb yourself in finding out more about Joe and his art. So let's get on with it. Just tell me, first of all, how did you get into art? What inspired you about getting into art in the first place?
I just love pictures, and to this day, my paintings have got no story. They're just about seeing, and one thing that we all love is seeing. And occasionally, I've asked anyone in an audience where I'm demonstrating if they've had their sight restored, say partially restored through something like removal of cataracts, and got a couple of hands. And I said, how did you feel when you could see? And they'll always say they absolutely loved it. It was a wonderful experience seeing, but we totally take seeing for granted. And what art does, what paintings do, is they recycle the act of seeing into a different part of the mind. They give us the joy of seeing again. And that's a partial answer to the great mystery of why we like paintings, why we love art, and tend to love art more than photographs. And I think it's because we're literally re-seeing something, and we're presenting that act of seeing. So a lot of my work is just about the joy of seeing, and there's no story behind it. It doesn't mean I exclude a story, purely the joy of seeing.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. And so, what sort of paintings do you typically find yourself? What sort of scenes or settings? Are you always landscape, or have you tried your hand at a number of other different themes?
I was very fortunate as a child. My dad was a mariner. He'd been in the merchant navy for years, and then in the navy afterwards, and he'd sailed yachts. So I had this tremendous maritime influence in my life. And I learned to paint boats and ships. And I also loved trains, steam locos especially, but all railways. And their steam locomotives are the most difficult thing to paint because they're full of transition curves in perspective, wheels, round things, very, very hard. So I got an early training at drawing. And from adolescence, I was going around finding locomotives and drawing them on site, plein air, from about the age of 12 or 13. And I've been plein air painting since I was 6. The first time was with my father's friend, Alex Anderson, a Danish man from Shoreham. And he was an artist and a beautiful plein air painter. He took me with him to a couple of locations, and I painted alongside him at the age of 6.
Oh, that's lovely. Have you got any of those paintings still bashing around anywhere?
I should have brought it. I've got my very first painting that I
Have you
did.
really?
Well, it's my first real plein air painting, and I thought, oh, I'm a real pro. I've been painting. I'd already learned to paint watercolor from my father, so very fortunate there. Just a little and often, a few minutes here and there. Wonderful. But this was sitting down with a real artist outside. Mind you, my father was a brilliant painter. I loved his work, and that influenced me as well.
So obviously things progress for you, and you've taken part in a number of exhibitions and things like that. So now, obviously, as a professional artist, I mean, let's forget lockdown year, because I know that's been a bit of a strange year for everybody. But on a normal basis, would you do a lot of travelling, or do you keep yourself fairly local? How do you tend to work?
For a long time, I was working in whatever environment was handy. So I studied in college, various colleges, and ended up in Middlesbrough. I loved Middlesbrough. It was Europe's biggest industrial area, and you could hear it humming. You could hear it roaring day and night, quiet roar in the distance. And you could actually used to go onto the North York moors over the weekend. And when you came back, I was on a motorbike. I'd come over the North York moors at Gisborough, 17 miles away. You could actually smell it as you came over the brow of the hill. But it was a very exciting place. And I drew and painted industry. And then later on, I worked for a gallery, and I'd been painting a lot of things and stuff, machinery, cranes, ships, trains, and I needed to learn to paint landscape. And I mentioned the story. My paintings are visual, they don't have a story, and I had to learn to put a bit of a story in. So I did. The gallery taught me how to create a composition that people could live with, and that's very helpful. So I painted the Surrey Hills where I was brought up, and that was my landscape. And I've drawn on that a lot. And then later on, I got asked, because people love water, I started getting commissions in the Middle East, of all places, an arid region, but they love water and they love green. They don't take it for granted like we do. So I started to paint the great Arabian wadis, and I didn't even know about them, but they snake through the mountains for hundreds of miles. Every single one is different. And they're water, shallow water with rocks, deep blue water, beautiful green palm trees, 100 meters wide band of subtropical paradise. And either side is arid desert mountains.
Wow.
So that's my other great sort of landscape.
Yeah.
And then traveling around, seeing local places in different countries and painting plein air. That's been nice.
What a fascinating life you've led so far. So that's amazing. And you, how much of your time do you find yourself teaching art and doing workshops with people versus focusing yourself on pieces of art and creating your own masterpieces?
That's a fantastic question, because it's a big question. A lot of artists teach to make a living, and a lot of us struggle with the problem of giving out teaching all the time without taking in and doing one's own aspirational work. And I found a really good solution for this was doing workshops. Now, how often did I do them? I did at least a couple of workshops where I was invited out to art societies. I have my own workshop series. I did a few residential courses each year. On the calendar, I suppose I count about 40 different events, from my 5-day painting, 8-day courses, 5 days of painting in Croatia. Then once or twice a year, I might go overseas to Russia or China or Thailand, something like that in the last few years. And then after lockdown, for a while last year, I was able to really concentrate on studio paintings and do detailed paintings which take up to a month. So one of the paintings I did took a month in the studio.
Right, right. Wow. So quite a lot of time for those exhibition style paintings. And how do you tend to sell your paintings? Do you find that most of your things come through galleries, or do people contact you directly and commission you for work, or how does that tend to work?
I sold my paintings through one-man shows. I worked with galleries for a long time, and they're fantastic. It's very hard to run a gallery. Obviously, you pay a big commission, and you should, because the work they do is tremendous. So they really earn their 50, 60%, whatever it is. But then I found it was better to run my own shows once a year. So I did those. It took a lot of energy to get together. A lot of people had come. That was up to 2007. And since then, I've only really done one-man show, which was a quick impromptu one. And I had all those exhibitions in the Surrey Hills, and they always did okay. Bit of a risk involved in paying upfront all the expenses, but
Yeah.
they always panned out. But then from 2008, I stopped, because if you remember the credit crunch, I thought it was much too risky to do this. And at that moment, I started working for clients in the Middle East by an agent in Surrey. So more recently, sales have just been individuals who've come along and said, I want this or that painting, or exhibitions. And the big growth area was China, and to an extent Russia. So I've been selling a few paintings there.
Right.
And the best way to sell paintings in China, I found, was to go there. But I put paintings into exhibitions, 1 or 2 exhibitions there, and they sold quite well.
Are there any? Because it sounds as though you've covered a number of different topics with your paintings. Are there any sort of paintings that tend to be more popular than others?
The thing that I love doing are the woodland river scenes. And I paint at one particular river quite a lot because it runs along the surface, not in deep clay, like most rivers in the south. And it's a river that runs through the Surrey Hills. There are many places where you can get in and look toward the sun in the morning or evening, with leaves on the trees, often in the spring or the autumn. And that's the time to paint a woodland river. And it's a smaller river, so the trees are practically joining across the top, not a big wide river. That's my ideal. And after that, I paint everything: rivers, lakes, ponds, the sea, waterfalls, you name it. But the Surrey woodland rivers are just so beautiful. They've got lovely names: the Cobbler's Brook, Darwin's Brook, the Tillingbourne. So that's been my #1 thing over the years.
Well, that's lovely, and that acts as a lovely segue into our next topic, because obviously for the workshop and what we want to talk about now a little bit is about river reflections, and you've got a painting on your board, and we've got a few paintings also to show, and this is obviously one of your paintings. You said this was a hit on Instagram, I think.
Yes, of all the paintings I put up, this one was one of the most popular. And it's the 3rd time I've painted this. The first painting, I think, went to St. Petersburg and stayed there.
Right.
And I had another go. And then in 2019, I think it was, I was demonstrating in Swansea, and this was a demo painting for Swansea Art Society. And I had a few photographs that I took of this river. It was a tremendous find. And in fact, it's the River Ada near the town of Horsham. Very secret rural location, though. It's difficult to find.
Wow, it looks lovely. And so explain a little bit, maybe just show us some of the paintings you've got here and explain a little bit about how you approach the reflections and how what you look for in your composition.
The first thing I look for overall in a painting is value, strength of light and dark. So you can see tremendous darkness and the light white of the paper. So I try and run the full range, and I'm not worried about using black. You can use black paint if you use bright, strong color. The base color for this, it's very helpful for people to know, is quinacridone gold. The quinacridones arrived from the 1980s, and they're magnificent colors. And it's just a much stronger, much more vibrant color than raw sienna, which is similar. And so I've used a lot of quinacridone gold in this painting. There's a lot of masking here, which gives the whites. And there's even some unfinished trees here. I've just left them. No one's ever complained about them. They look lovely, and I don't want to mess with them. But if you look closely, they don't actually make sense. So I'm leaving them. And Amit Kapoor said something very interesting. He's presenting a video, or he's painting the video, and I was trying to present it. And he said, stop at 70%. Never forgot that.
Right.
Stop at 70%. So I don't quite manage 70%. This isn't a demo painting. What this is a painting I photographed in steps for a workshop. And it's one of the few here that isn't a demo painting. So I think it took 2 or 3 hours in the studio. And it's not quite as highly polished as a pure studio painting will be. And it's a place we go camping every year near the Ashdown Forest. Beautiful little place.
Caught the light really well there. It looks beautiful. It makes me want to go and visit.
Well, actually you can. I'll give you the phone number afterwards. If you like fishing, it's the place to go. So yeah, lovely place. Got very early in the morning in August. That's when that is.
And I can see there that you've caught the light just behind the tree, which almost makes the tree look even darker against.
Yes.
Yes.
In fact, I've done something which I don't often do, but I don't have any rules. I very rarely do this, but I thought it would help here. There was just a touch of mistiness, so I just put some strong white paint over, very strong, or it just disappears. Can't remember what. Probably designer's white gouache with some water. So I just brushed it over that zone there, but mainly for white. I leave the light, I leave the white of the paper.
Right.
So,
wow. Yeah, it looks lovely. It looks lovely. And sorry, how long did you say that would take to do?
That one, I'll put it back again. That took 2 to 3 hours, probably 3 hours. And the next one is the same place.
Yeah.
And it took 2 hours.
Okay.
So this is the other side of one of the 2 or 3 lakes there. So that's this one.
Yeah.
That was for Battle Art Society a few years ago. So that's a 2-hour Art Society demo. And I don't know how much it shows up, but I love, if I can, to put some bright red in. And I've put bright red in there. That's magenta, and bright cadmium red with some orange to make it an orangey red, which is a color I love. And there's deep ultramarine blue there. Any excuse to put really bright colors in if I can.
Gary's asked, what paper do you typically use?
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, I use Arches, 140 pound, 300 GSM. Rough or not. Rough is easier to demonstrate on. Not is slightly easier if you're going to do intense detail for a studio painting. And I use 140 pounds at any size. I used to do a lot of oversized paintings, 40 inches across or more, with oversized sheets, and I did them on 300 or 400 pound arches. But now I'd work up to full sheet on 140 pound. That's up to 30 inches on this paper, just like that. Very reliable paper. Car analogy is French, but it's the Volkswagen Golf of the paper world. if you're into cars. I used to use Whatman 200 pounds knot, and that was a beautiful paper. There's a similar one done by St Cuthbert's Mill called Milford at 140 pounds, but I use Arches for its reliability. So I've got quite a few paintings, all demos. This one is the Lot, the south of France, and probably
That's quite hard to capture because obviously there are rocks near the surface and the water's running over it. That's a hard thing to capture, that, isn't it? With the light rippling over the top.
Yes, it's the one thing that motivated me. I had a spell away from painting in the 80s, and I wanted to do a painting for my sister's wedding, and I also wanted to try and capture these underwater rocks. So I did a bridge down in Devon at a place called Durford on the edge of Dartmoor. I started tangling with underwater rocks, and I remember the thrill of actually beginning to get them. This is something I can teach. It's not that difficult. There wasn't anyone to teach it at the time.
Right.
So just as they say now, for something completely different.
Yes.
I don't know if that's
Oh,
fit
wow.
on there. So that's a demo done at a lovely place called Watershed.
Watershed Studio. I know that. Yeah. And you've caught the light there as the river bends round to the right. You've caught that change of light as the light's streaming down the tunnel of buildings really well.
Yes, I had to do. Excuse me, paintings are falling over there. This is what I call a Ryanair painting. If I could just explain that. I had to do a book about Venice, and at my own cost, I had to go to Venice, and I flew by Ryanair. It's actually a great experience. I messed up my boarding pass, so they just printed me another one straight away. No problem, didn't charge you any money. But that's another story. I got to Venice really cheaply, and I only had 2 full days and 2 half days to paint it. So I thought, what do you do? Well, I went to a postcard place, looked at the best postcards. Oh, that's a good view. That's a good view. And there was one of this, and I took my own photographs up there in the evening. But the postcard helped me nail the position to put your feet. Photography is not about what you see through the lens, it's where you put your feet. So I had my photo, and I worked with that.
Yeah,
and also credit where it's due. For the first one, this is the second demo I did. I got some inspiration from looking at Joe Spukvich's work. Joseph Spukvich, Olivier man, wonderful master. So what I learned from looking at his work helped me a bit to get this. But here you go, Venice.
That's lovely. Oh, another one.
This is better whiz through them quite a few. This is Becky Falls near Dartmoor. And this was a masterclass. A masterclass doesn't mean I'm a master. It probably means I'm trying to master it. But what it means to me is when you really sit down with just a handful of other artists and you have a quiet time. I just paint. We talk quietly together. They make suggestions. Sometimes they've actually chosen the painting. So it's the commitment to get a really nice painting and for everybody to sort of buy into that they're going to have quite a nice, quiet, detailed session with a bit of concentration, quite sort of intimate surroundings. And a guy called Jason Reeks filmed this, and he was the only person at this masterclass, because after a workshop, I just sometimes like to paint in the evening, and I say anybody who wants to can join, and he joined. So this was one of those, not the sort of much more fast and free session where you're demonstrating to a lot of people.
So let's move on now to what you're proposing to do for the workshop, and it's another sort of river scene, but it's a more spring day, fresh colours. It's a really lovely setting. There we go.
This is the workshop. And
you were saying that this has got the reflections in the water, but it's also a fairly technically challenging piece for a number of reasons. Maybe you can just and you're obviously going to talk through all the different processes to create this. What maybe you can talk about some of the skills that you'll be running through in this workshop.
The technical challenge is to get the light shining through the leaves with the sun behind them. But the leaves are light and transparent, but they're in front of the trees. And if you try it with acrylic or body color, that's fine, but you don't get this beautiful sunny brightness and color. Watercolor often works best when it's transparent. Not always, and I'm not one for rules, but getting the light leaves in front of the trees. There's a second thing as well. I'm always painting into the sun with a low sun. So the sun is ahead, but up there somewhere, not far up above the woodland. So you're looking into the sun. What's happening is the sun is shining through the grass, shining through the leaves from behind. So they're literally like stained glass inside a building. You're looking out through stained glass. And the colors they pick up are the warm colors, the oranges, the yellows. So you get this beautiful yellow, green. If you look the other way, it's the English somber green of, you know, the sunlit lawn. It's not this bright green. And what the light does is it splits the green into two, a bright yellow green and a dark blue green, and not a lot in between. So those are the things you're wrestling with. And finally, there are glints. Now, glints are actually reflections, like a mirror. And even stone or brick will give a mirror-like white reflection if the sun's at the right angle. Leaves are a bit more shiny, and that's what's happening here. These are leaves glinting in the sunlight. That's where the whites are coming from. Glints are difficult. They're varying amounts of success, making them look as though they're really shining. But they always work because you've got lovely white in there. Some of these are done. Well, there are 2 or 3 techniques. You'll see what they are when we do it. The techniques will arm you to do it. So that's the difficult bit. And the foreground here was just grass, so not quite as difficult. It's a bit of masking. Then the water has to be done quickly. It doesn't take long. So the whole of the rest of the painting, if I'm demonstrating at a workshop, it can be 1 hour and 45 minutes. There are 15 minutes left, and people are often getting worried. And I just say something silly like, "Oh well, I don't know what we're going to do for the last 5 minutes," and you know they think I'm confident, which I'm not, but it helps. So I'm not always. Anything could go wrong, but the water doesn't take long. And in fact, what we're going to learn is you don't paint water on a painting, you paint it on a palette. That's where the action is, on the palette. Once you get it right on the palette, it'll be fine on the painting.
Yeah, no, that's great.
People actually don't believe it either.
No. Well, I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be lovely, and it's happening next exactly a week today, so on the 20th of May, and it will be at 3:30 in the UK time. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube and you love the talent that you've seen on display today, please do hit the thumbs up button, as it helps YouTube recommend the show to more people, helping us to inspire people to give art a try, young and old alike. So that would be great. Thank you. Now, while Joe gets ready to paint with our patrons, booking a place next week couldn't be simpler. So let me just show you how to do it on our website now. So what you do is you head over to Shopkeep Arty. You click on the live events button, and then it'll take you through to our live events page. You scroll down and you can find Joe's workshop event there. Click on the see details and it will take you to the details page, and on here it explains some of the things Joe's been talking about today with the reference painting there, and a list of materials, recommended materials that Joe recommends. We've also got a 10% off deal with Jackson's Art as well, if you want to top up on anything. Then if you're interested, you click that link and it will take you through to Joe's shop. And on here, you can see the live webinar, or you can order a video if you can't make the date. Now, on the live webinar page, we've got 2 options. So you can either order a webinar place, or you can order the webinar plus the video, and just simply add that to cart. And if you're paying in dollars or whatever, your bank will change it after checkout. If you've bought the video, that will be available on our video library. And you can click the button on our main website and go to our video library, or you can click on the videos in the top menu, and then you can scroll down, find Joe's video. It'll be at the top if it's only recently just done, and if you've purchased it and we've unlocked it, you press the watch button, and then that will play for you on any device, be it your phone, tablet, computer, even smart TVs. So you can play it wherever you are, and you can watch it as many times as you want. So I hope that's been useful for you. Now, if watching a recording of this on YouTube, you'll also find direct links to that shop in the description below. And for those on YouTube, thank you for watching. I hope you can join us next week when we'll be meeting Jane Bettridge and Pablo Ruben Lopez Sanz live from Madrid. For those of you joining us live, it's now time for a boost of creative inspiration, and I hope you've been keeping those brushes wet, because now it's time to get painting.